Nick Movshon is one of the musicians that you may not recognize, but his bass playing has been heard by millions around the world. From Amy Winehouse to Bruno Mars to Lady Gaga, Nick quietly became one of the most in-demand session bassists in modern music. Not through hype, not through social media, but through showing up and delivering every single time. It is I, the Poptimist, and today we have Nick Movshon.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming back on.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. I don't know if you saw it, but Ron Wood recently went on Jimmy Fallon, and he said that the Rolling Stones are doing a cover of "You Know I'm No Good" on the record. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. It was. They were talking. Like Jimmy was like, yeah, they're doing an Amy Winehouse cover, and then they started singing the horn lick. It's a great video. You should look it up. But
wow,
when you hear something like that, I mean, Back to Black came out 20 years ago.
Yeah, literally 20 years ago. Which is crazy.
What is your initial reaction when you hear the Rolling fucking Stones are covering a song you did?
I mean, I'd be very curious to hear like if they're like true to the arrangement. And if like, you know, Steve Jordan and who's playing bass in the Stones?
I don't know who's playing bass now in the Stones.
Like, I wonder if they'll actually try to like cop the rhythmic thing that me and my boy Homer did on it. But I mean, I would say more than anything, it's like, I guess that just attests to like the durability of and the quality of like Amy's songs.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if I mentioned this the last time, but like, you know, like at the time, like we didn't think that much of them as we were like making the record, but clearly they've struck some kind of like now multi-generational nerve. And if it's enough to like, you know, hit kids in 2006 and then hit kids again in 2016 and then hit 80-year-old rock stars in 2026 enough to motivate them to do it, like that's great. That's a great feeling, you know?
So when you first met Amy, like Mark had brought you in. Well, Gabe Roth had brought you in.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, I was part of that. I guess I was like first deputy bass chair, you know, and I think I sort of explained this last time, but you know, I was like the only other guy who could like hack that kind of stuff at that time.
The funky shit.
Yeah, and like you know, sort of like the pre-1972 funky shit, which is the stuff that I'd basically like sat at Gabe's knee and he had showed me, he had at least directed me to the right records and directed me away from, you know, things like Envelope Filter, you know, bootsy kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
and
the more slappy, poppy kind of.
I mean,
funk.
I can like barely play slap bass even now. You know, it's but getting away from the more P-funky kind of lines, and sort of like by gentle direction and also just like osmosis, and also like me having like a growing love for that music with Gabe's help. I was the first one of now tons and tons of different guys, at least at that time in New York, who actually started to understand the idiom in a way where I could jump in and, you know, play well in the context of like a record like that.
So when you guys were doing this record, when did you first meet Amy? Was it in the studio? Did you guys have rehearsals beforehand?
No, all the songs that we recorded, let me think. We recorded Rehab, You Know I'm No Good, Wake Up Alone, and maybe two others, just from demos that Mark had. Amy was not in the country; she hadn't been to New York.
Oh wow!
Basically, Mark was doing like we were I guess supposed to be stage one production, right? He was like, okay, these guys have this studio and this sound. He had previously, I don't know, New York or London or whatever, he had sat down and written these songs with Amy, or Amy had brought the songs to him and they had fleshed them out. And then Mark contacted us, and the studio crew was put together by Gabe Roth. But then Mark just came to the studio with like, you know, fucking CDJs of the demos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, so it's like Amy was not physically in the mix for a minute. We cut those like 5 songs, I guess. And then I think the first time that we met her, maybe she like came out and like we all went out for dinner and like got drunk and like went out. But I think if I remember correctly, I think the first time we actually met her was when she came to the studio to cut the cover of Valerie.
Okay.
Which was like,
which is a Zooton song.
It's a Zooton song.
Yeah.
And that guy, the guy who wrote the song, was also in the mix a little bit there as well. He was this like, you know, scouse maniac. But she came to Daptone Studios, which is the studio where the other stuff was recorded, which was like at that point, that was like Gabe's studio was in this like broken down house in Bushwick. It was really sort of like the end of the world in New York as far as like, you know, music gentrification and that sort of stuff was happening. And she came out and we cut that one song,
Valerie.
We cut 2 versions of it. Like we cut like a slow, like funky version, and then we did like
the 68 version.
The 68 version we did like 6 takes of. And then at the end of the day, and she sang live, which was really cool. And then at the end of the day, Mark was just like, "Oh, can you do like a Motown version of it?" And we did. I think we did 1 take.
And that's the one that's on his record version.
That's the one on version that, especially in the UK, maybe a little less so in the US, but in the UK, that's maybe the most identifiable Amy song in the UK. And again, it's like with all this stuff, it's like we shut that out in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? It was like me and Homer just started playing that rhythm, and Mark was just like, "Yeah, it's great. Just like record it," you know. And we just did it and knocked it out. But that was the first time. But that was Amy singing live. I don't know if they used her scratch vocals or she redid the vocals, but that was the first time we met. And then she started coming to New York quite a lot, and there was some promotional stuff, and I ended up actually becoming like pretty tight with her, and we would like go out and like hang out in New York and like go out and get drunk basically. And then she deteriorated, and we didn't see her so much anymore.
Yeah,
you know.
Is there any truth to the rumor that you guys did a James Bond song?
There was a James Bond theme that was done that didn't come out. I didn't play on it. Gabe played on that.
Okay.
That was, I think, enough of a wide scale, like large scale production that Gabe had another engineer. So yes, that did happen. It didn't come out, but I had nothing to do with it.
Gotcha. Okay. When you guys were coming up, what was New York like in that time period?
In what, like musically or just sort of like
musically,
culturally?
yeah. Well, both. I feel like both kind of feed into each other.
It was. I suppose you could say it was in like a sort of very transitional era. So you know, New York is such a big city that a lot of these things that you take from the sort of cultural substance of a city are going to really depend geographically where you are. So
like what part of town you're in?
What part of town, literally. So I don't know if you're that familiar with New York, but me and all the guys that I started playing music with when I was a teenager, which was like the Mighty Imperials and all that sort of stuff, we all grew up in downtown Manhattan. We all grew up in Greenwich Village. Like I grew up on Bleecker Street, and my buddy Leon grew up on 12th Street, and my buddy Homer grew up on 10th Street. So this was like, we were like downtown kids. Now at that point, downtown New York was past its sort of like, I like punk CBGB burned out heyday. Like it was safer than it was. And it was like not quite as cheap. So it wasn't like a bombed out wasteland. It wasn't like you see photos from like the 70s and the 80s where there's like, you know, guys in the middle of the street like warming their hands on 55-gallon, you know, like oil cans. But it was still much more laissez-faire and tolerant of basically like sort of bad behavior. And you could kind of get away with a lot of shit. It wasn't as busy. It hadn't become the like commercial hub that it is now, because now like you walk around downtown Manhattan, like literally where I grew up, like I grew up like right on the cusp of Greenwich Village and Soho. When I was a kid was empty, and you could do whatever the fuck you wanted. And now it's just like a high-end shopping mall. It's like, imagine you're in the Dubai airport, except all the buildings have like, you know, very nice cast iron facades. What that meant was we could basically do whatever we wanted. And it was unsafe, but we were like city kids, so we could kind of like negotiate our way around without getting into too much trouble. And the cops didn't fuck with us too much, and we could kind of like, you know, we didn't get sort of like, we didn't get too knocked down upon from either like other kids who wanted to rob us or like cops. Like we managed to figure it out, and that was really, you know, that was really good because it allowed us to like, you know, we'd just like sit on stoops and like blast mixtapes that we made and all that sort of stuff, and basically just be like shit teenagers. And I don't know, I think maybe like that sense of like relative freedom and unencumberedness probably helped us just kind of like live in our own lane and become like more enamored with things that ended up being in the music. Because it was like, again, it's like you could just do what you wanted, right? So it was like we were able to be like self-deterministic about it, I suppose.
Was there a scene that you guys were a part of?
No. I mean like there was the very beginnings of a scene in Williamsburg, which is a neighborhood in Brooklyn, which is now wildly gentrified and has bears no resemblance to what it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. But there was a whole crew of guys who were, I don't know, between like sort of 5 and 10 years older than us, who were doing things like really getting into like Fela and getting into all like the soul stuff and like opening up these like either like sort of like ad hoc venues or taking over smaller venues in Williamsburg and starting to play shows. But that was like largely unrelated from our experience. You know, it's like we were into soul music and sort of like the earlier iterations of like when we were in Mighty Imperials, like at the start of it, we were into like P-Funk stuff and that kind of thing and playing that kind of music. But that was like totally self-deterministic. But there was no scene around it whatsoever. Like the scene was like,
it was just you guys were super into it.
We were just super into it. It was like literally, it was like that was like scratching our collective itch, and it wasn't like we had like, you know, we didn't have like older brother bands, you know, like it was kind of operating in a vacuum, which is, I don't know, it's kind of cool that we did it in retrospect. But
well, when I think of New York, especially that era, I think of a couple of different things. I think of, you know, Biggie Smalls, Wu-Tang Clan,
Sure.
The Strokes.
Well, the Strokes was a little later.
A little later, okay.
Little bit.
Okay.
Like the sort of resurgent New York rock scene, like New York being cool, maybe happened like a few years after, like we started sinking our teeth into it a little bit. We were also never cool, right? Like what we were doing, we weren't like the super cool kids on the scene. Like we were doing weird shit, you know?
Yeah, it was just something kind of different. Well, the one thing that I've always kind of noticed in the music that you guys make together, it sounds very rooted in hip hop. It's like through the ears of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that influence?
Well, I mean, I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head when you say like Wu-Tang records.
Yeah.
It was like what we were listening to was jazz. Once we got exposed to it, all like the really like fucked up, rare 45 funk stuff and like 36 Chambers and like Cuban Links and like Iron Man and like, you know, ODB and like maybe like starting to get into like Mobb Deep and like, you know, like the really, really classic mid-90s New York hip hop, which, you know, I think, I mean, it's still some of my favorite shit. Like I love a lot of more modern hip hop, but like that was like, you know, a good sort of like 25% of our entire pot of our musical influence was coming directly from those really like just amazing fucked up boom bap 90s New York hip hop records.
You can really hear it too, because it's like you guys, of course, are musicians and you're playing, but it's through the lens of hip hop. And I love the L. Michaels Affair records. The
like Enter the 37th Chamber.
Yeah, and Return to the 37th Chamber.
Yeah.
I love both those albums. They're so cool.
I agree. I think they're great records.
Yeah, they're great records, but it's like the style that you guys have together, even with like Minahan Street Band, is very cinematic.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, we're like, I suppose you could say we are flashy players in our own way, and maybe it's sort of like in an ensemble sense, but like, you know, virtuosic displays of musical, you know, gymnastics and all that sort of stuff was like never really at the top of our list. Like we were much more like, we just want to make something that we think sounds cool.
In the pocket.
Yeah, and like not that complicated. I mean, that's the other thing. The other funny thing about like the hip hop stuff, it's like some of the bass lines that I'm playing on those songs, like nothing is happening.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those songs, you know, there's a sample part that's looped.
Yeah.
So like when you play it on bass, you might just be playing like 3 notes the entire time.
Well, yeah, that's when it starts to get kind of tricky and sort of I suppose like musical generations and I, you know, like live music that's been sampled and then recast as live music again.
Yes.
So it's like sort of like multiple layers through the washing machine. But what you get, I guess, with the way that we play music together is something that somehow becomes its own thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, even to this day, and you may be able to correct me, but like I can't think of many other examples of like people doing what we did.
No.
Or maybe they did. Maybe it just like isn't. Maybe it didn't hit, or it didn't like, you know, it wasn't like compelling for people. But yeah, I mean, it's really simple. It's like kind of rugged. Like a lot of the rough edges show, not unlike a lot of those hip hop records that we grew up loving. But like to me, I love it. I love those records.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. Well, when we did the first episode a couple of years ago, one thing you mentioned is that you weren't very musically sophisticated at the time of doing back to black. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that sophistication came over time? Do you feel like it came over time?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I've definitely improved. I've improved as a bass player pretty steadily for the majority of my time that I've been doing this. But that's basically just come from like making more records and just absorbing more outside influences. It's not because like my like practice schedule became more diligent or anything like that. Like that was just like I made enough records that I got better. And then also when I was playing live, I would get better too. I mean, you know, if you're playing live all the time, like you stay sharper in terms of chops and stuff. But yeah, that was just like learned experience. That was like I came by that shit honestly. You know what I mean? Like,
you had to earn it.
Yeah, I really did. But yeah, it's kind of funny putting timelines on things. Like, I think I didn't really get good as a bass player. I would probably say that I got good as a bass player around the time that like the first Menahan record came out.
Okay.
Like really, I really got my wings in like 2010, 2011.
What do you mean by good? Do you mean like more of a groove, more lyrical in your playing?
I think I was able to more readily express myself in maybe slightly more sophisticated ways than I would have been, for instance, on like the Winehouse record or like the Enter the 37th Chambers. And I could do it in a way which like totally wouldn't break my brain or my fingers wouldn't completely just fall over themselves. And that was honestly probably, like that was the era I got really, really into Jamerson. And I started learning Jamerson bass lines. And I was like, holy shit, I really, because, like Mighty Imperials records, Wu-Tang records, Winehouse stuff. Like if you listen to actually like the stuff I'm playing on the bass, it would be dun 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 dun. You know, it'd all be those like kind of like linear runs and all that sort of stuff. And then I started like digging into like the sort of like meat of Jamerson's playing and like David Hood a little bit as well. But like,
oh yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah, but and I would just be like, oh, there is so much more to this world than I had been doing, and I guess I just like spent a lot of time over those few years. I also got a P bass. I got my first P bass around then.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I had a Sunburst P bass, and I was just like with the covers on it, and I was just like, oh shit, now I can learn Jamerson lines. So I know that's like fanboyism, but it's kind of the way that it worked. And that was just like not a lot of like practice with metronomes, but it was more like me like digging into new records and figuring out how to apply them in both live and studio situations. So it's kind of like pragmatic. It's one of these things. It's like, oh, if I want to like execute more sophisticated ideas, I need to like figure out where I'm pulling them from and then actually figure out how to fucking play them,
Well, there's only 12 notes at the end of the day.
There are only 12 notes.
And the one thing that I've kind of learned like in my time in Nashville is that when I'm playing a song, I can be like, well, it's actually kind of like this other song and I can do this in it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You
start to see the pattern recognition a little bit more. Like the more experience that you get. Did you ever get to a point to where you kind of felt stuck or unhappy in your playing or in your career?
Always. Well, I mean, those are. I would say those are two different questions.
Definitely two different things.
I actually experienced this. I experienced this frequently, and but inconsistently. It's inconsistently. Let me put it this way. So the only times where I've really felt like I've been able to play anything that I wanted to play in a way that I wanted to play it were periods where I spent long periods of time on the road. Those are the only times. It was like the only thing that would get me to a place as a musician where I didn't feel like I was working my way up to the idea, like working my way up physically to be able to express the ideas that like I had in my head was when I was playing like tons and tons of shows a year, right? And that happened intermittently, right? So it's like I would tour and then I would not tour and I would tour and then I would not tour. And it was like when I was touring, I could play really good. And when I was not touring, whenever I get in the studio, it would like always be a bit of a struggle. So yes, especially now as I play a lot less shows, like I often pick up a bass and I'm just like, I feel like I got like yogurt hands. Like I'm like, I can barely play this fucking thing, which is like a little bit disheartening sometimes. But the flip side of that is it's like, I know that the muscle's in there. I just need to like fucking play.
Yeah. Well, it is a muscle.
It is.
Anytime you step away from it, it's like getting back to the gym or going on that first run after you haven't done one.
Which
for
is
a
always
while.
like the worst,
Yeah,
the worst
you're
thing
dying
in the world.
2 minutes in.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So that's been a constant struggle. The other thing that's often contributed to me feeling like I couldn't play the bass specifically as well as I should be able to, or I wanted to be able to, is when I was getting into other instruments. Like I've gone through long periods of time where I'm just like, all I want to do is play drums.
Really?
Or, like, all I want to do is play guitar.
Well, we talked a little bit about that last time when you were working with Lana Del Rey. You ended up playing like drums on half of the Ultraviolence record.
I did, yeah.
So when you get into those obsessions where you're getting into the zone playing, are you just sitting at the drum set playing along to records you love? What are you doing?
I mean, kinda. You know, not necessarily like playing along, but or like trying to absorb, like stylistic worlds, and then getting technically good enough where I can sort of express the feelings, which I really, really take in a positive way from a lot of these records and genres.
The vibe, the feeling.
Yeah, the vibe and the feeling. And so there's also kind of a funny thing that happened within our little musical world, at least in terms of like me playing drums, which was like, you know, like my boy Homer, who I've made records with for 30 years, and I still make records with, who I'm in Nashville with right now making a record with, right? Like he has the best fucking like soul feel of like anybody that I've ever
He's great.
played. He's amazing. He's got an amazing fucking left hand. He's got an amazing feel. It's totally unique. It's not like technically perfect, but it is just like it just feels so good all the time. So my shit was like I can play that kind of stuff. I can play like funk beats and soul beats, and I know the lexicon and I can do it. But like my thing with the drums, and when I would get like really, really obsessed with stuff, would be digging into things like Tony Allen, like Afrobeat drumming, or like reggae drumming, and that kind of thing, and really try to, because I've always been obsessed with these records, like really try to get into the heads of the guys that were playing on all these not American records that I loved. And part of that was like a vindication, because I was like, I'm the only guy who can do this. Like there was a point where I was like one of the only like American guys who could play Afrobeat drums correctly. You know what I mean? And those are like totally worthwhile side quests, right? But the problem is if I spend a number of months whenever I go to the studio and I'm not recording, like sitting at the drum set as opposed to playing bass, then I actually try to pick
Then
up
you
the
get
bass.
a call for bass.
And I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta go on tour, or I gotta make a record or something. And then, you know, like, you know, the first night I end up with just like the most comedic, like, you know, horrible blisters, or the first time like recording in the studio, I'm like, are people noticing? Are people noticing how terrible this is? But then it comes back.
When do you decide to use a pick versus using your fingers?
That's a good question. Over the years, I've gravitated more and more to enjoying the sound of picked bass, and I got a lot better at it over the years. And it's one of these things, like when I started, I could barely play with a pick in like 2010. This is also talking about like building that sort of like the generalized skill, and like when it came to me, like in 2010, I could go do. I could play all the stuff with my fingers and my thumb and all that sort of stuff. Like I had a kind of a wild style where I would use 2 fingers, but I would use my thumb on the E string, which is weird, but I would do that. I couldn't play with a pick. But then when I started getting more into like, do you know who Dave Richmond is? You ever heard the Serge Gainsbourg record, Histoire de Melody Nelson?
Oh, yeah. That's a very...
That guy.
Is a pick sound.
It's a pick sound, and it's a very, very distinctive thing. And there was also a period of time in the records that were being made in kind of like the 2010s where that picked 60s Euro sound hadn't sort of overly permeated itself through a lot of production techniques that you were hearing on like kind of current pop or indie records or whatever. And I was like, oh, this shit is cool as hell. And that's when I got into that. And then when I got much better at doing that sort of thing with a pick, like I would often grab a pick when I was playing, to the point where like a lot of my friends that I would make records with would be like, can you put the pick down, please? I was like, no, it sounds great. They're like, just play with your fucking fingers, man. So that's like changed over time. But then also, I mean, there are obvious studio situations where it's like, yeah, you're not going to play with a pick on this. Or if you do play with a pick, you're turning the tone knob all the way off, and you are palm muting like crazy, so it doesn't sound like you're playing with a pick. But yeah, that's just like taste, I guess. That's just like me using my musical intuition to determine what will sound better in the track.
It's something that people argue all the time about in terms of being a bass player. It's like I've had people come up to me and they're like, you use a pick, and it's like, well, on some
Really?
song, yeah, dude, definitely. Like,
I've never been pick shamed as a bass player.
yeah,
That's crazy.
I've been pick shamed, but it depends for me on like the style and like what style is it, how hard of a rock sound I'm going for.
Right.
Because if you're playing, like, there's some Zeppelin shit where it sounds better with a pick, and there's some Zeppelin shit where it sounds better with your fingers.
Yeah, like Immigrant Song, you couldn't play that without a pick.
Yeah. I don't know if John Paul Jones.
Oh no, I'm sorry, not Immigrant Song, Heartbreaker.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's the one with the crazy Leslie pick sound.
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah.
like the skronkiest fucking bass tone
Yeah.
ever. I love it so
Yeah.
much. Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So it's like there's certain things, and especially playing live, I'm playing live and I'm starting to get tired, then I'm like, I'm gonna use this pick.
I'm just gonna
on this next
just
one.
give the digits a rest.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that and my argument is always, because I would say I'm like 50-50. It just depends on the song for me.
Yeah.
But people, they love to talk shit about bass, and you can even see it in comments. People will talk shit in comments, and I'm like, Paul McCartney used a pick.
This is like a whole new world about.
You don't know anything about the pick shaming.
I know nothing about. I only know about bass pick maxing. I know nothing about bass pick shaming. But ultimately, it's like there are plenty of examples where using a pick on a bass is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the other thing is, I mean, like, I'm sure you kind of feel this way as a bass player sometimes too, where I'm like, there's like a track, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a McCartney thing on this one, and people are just like, dude, you're playing about 4 times as many notes as you should be. And then you got to remember, it's like at the end of the day, it's like I'm a busy bass player and I play a lot of ghost notes and I play a lot of weird passing chromatic stuff. But, like ultimately it's like there have been a lot of situations where I probably could have played a little bit less. And there are lots of situations where, like, if you listen to the first take of what I recorded, there is way, way too much shit going on. And by like take 3, like when I've got it together, it's like I've actually gotten back into the kind of lane that I should be.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, I know it's like a completely like stupid cliche thing to say, but with bass, like less is more.
Totally.
80% of the time.
Well, the way I see bass is an unglamorous position in terms of being in a band. You're like defense.
So much control though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's everybody knows if you fuck up. Like I was at Honky Tonk School yesterday. I don't know if you know about Honky Tonk School in Nashville. So the Tootsie Circuit has this thing on Mondays from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. where people could come in to try and get gigs. And you can either audition as a full band or you meet other players and put a band
Who's
together.
judging? Who's the arbiter of?
So it's the people that play at Tootsie's. They're like the higher ups.
Okay, so these will be you like
Bookers.
the incoming. Oh, it's the bookers. It's not the musicians themselves.
Well, there's the musicians are also the bookers.
Okay.
For that circuit. So that circuit is Tootsie's, Kid Rock's, Honky Tonk Central, and Rippy's.
Okay, Roberts is not part of this.
No,
ecosystem.
Roberts is his own thing.
Okay.
Darren, he's a great bass player. He's played on a bunch of different shit, and he's been in Nashville for like 30 years.
Okay.
But he was just kind of talking about, like, you don't want to completely shred your faces off. It's like the people that are coming to downtown Nashville.
Taste is king, man.
Yeah. Are wanting to hear you do the version of the song that they know. It's like you can take some liberties, and of course live, it's like it might have been a hit from 20 years ago or whatever, and it does a live fade out. Well, you have to come out with an ending for a live fade out.
Right, but presumably there's half a dozen stock endings which you can draw from that everybody's going to be familiar with, and everybody's going to
it's just everybody's got to be on the same page, which is half the battle.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's something me, like, I'm so intimidated. Like, whenever I go to, like, I mean, Roberts is probably the place where I've seen most of this, but it's so fucking intimidating seeing really, really hot shit Nashville guys play these sets. And just like,
Dude.
just like the level of execution, but also just like the shit is so soulful as well. I don't know. I'm always just like, I feel like very much, it feels like voyeuristic to me because I'm just like, I can fucking do that.
Well, it's funny you say that because it's like, you really have to just do it in order to get good at it because it's 4-hour sets. There are going to be things that you get that because there's going to be shit that people come up and they'll ask for like Pink Pony Club or Sweet Home Alabama or something like that.
Right.
But it's like someone could come up and it's like they could request a song that you've never even like heard before.
So what's the missive? What do you do?
So there's a couple different ways to go about it. You could either turn them down Or if it's an artist that you know, let's say they're asking for like a random Foo Fighters deep cut or something like that. Because sometimes people will come up and just ask for.
So you're like this is songs with like intros and choruses and pre-choruses and bridges and all this sort of
stuff.
Yeah,
and you're like, we can't do that, but we can do Everlong or we can do Learn to Fly. And usually people are happy with that.
When like, oh my God, you're making my night.
Yeah.
So there's not a thing where like the guy who's playing guitar is like it's like 1-6-2-5 and then the pre is 2-3.
Sometimes it's that because I mean there's just so much music you could get asked for thousands of songs like in the history of pop music playing downtown.
And it's good that 75% of those songs have the same 4 chords, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what key are we in? And you know it's probably gonna be a 1-6-2-5 or 1 whatever.
There are certain songs that get called and it's like. There are players that are like, this is a lot of chords. Like if it gets called and I'm like, I've never played it before, whatever. And it's like,
and you're in the line of fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're in the line of fire.
Well, and the other thing that Darren was talking about, he's like, he said the janitor knows if the bass player fucks up on stage.
Oh yeah, no, I mean like the potential level of embarrassment for us.
Oh, dude,
is high.
There's no faking it when you're a bass player.
But you know what? It's really good because you know it forces us some sort of like holistic responsibility with what we do, and I think it actually makes us much sturdier in the rest of our lives as well.
Dude, I agree with that.
And it's like it's like self-deterministic. You know.
Well, it's you have to become the center of gravity.
Yeah.
Everything kind of revolves around you in that moment because if you're fucking like I have been the guy on stage where I've been butchering a song and basically
of course
the rule of thumb in Nashville for playing on Broadway, and this is another thing Darren said yesterday. He said, you get one time. If you fuck up the song, you get one.
Like one a set or like one ever?
Oh, so let's say someone requests a song like you've never played. I mean, this is a super common song, but let's just say you've never played it before. Like, we'll say Valerie, for example.
Hey.
That's one that gets, I would say the Amy song that gets requested most down on Broadway.
So like twice a year?
No, it's pretty frequent.
Right.
And you've never heard the song, you don't know it, you can butcher through it that one time. Most of the people are drunk and the audience doesn't really know. But the musicians know, and you can get a reputation for yourself. So it's like you have to go home and do the homework and learn the song to come back. If that song ever gets called again, you're ready.
But you'll be provided a little more grace if the request is a more abstract, non-canonical song.
Yeah, but so okay, there's different rules of thought on this. Some people just say flat out no, but sometimes like drunk people will come up to you and they'll be like, "I'll pay you $500 to do this song right now." And when that happens, you have to either offer them.
Can you not just like grab your phone as quickly as possible and like be like, "What the fucking chords?"
Well, that's what you do.
Yeah,
because it's like sometimes if they ask and they're like, "We'll put 20 in the bucket," and whatever, and you'll be like, "No, we're not doing it for that."
But if someone's trying to kick you like 3 figures,
yeah, then it's like, okay, we're gonna figure this out.
I mean, good. Like that's. I mean, like that. That's also like that's talk about motivation for thinking fast on your feet, man.
Well, it forces you to get better.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Man, I'm actually like really envious of you because I'm like not put in these situations and. You know, it's like I'm kind of like I kind of get like tree brain. Like I move slowly.
Dude, it's scary as fuck. Like there have been times where I've been terrified, and not to mention too, like when I first started playing down there, I was playing a lot with my buddy Josh Norfleet. He's a great guitarist here in town, and we were playing at this club called Big Machine.
Okay,
and. It
like Big Machine, like the publishing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
or not publish a record label.
Yeah, record label. But they have a spot down there, and their sound system is really like a shitty setup, and you had to have in-ears, and I didn't have in-ears, so I would play, and I would be like, God. Every time I played with Josh, I was like, fuck, I really suck tonight.
Right.
Like on shit like Have You Ever Seen the Rain? Which is not a hard song.
It's not a hard song.
But in the moment of playing it, when you can't really hear, you realize how important it is. And I remember one time, Josh let me borrow his in-ears because he doesn't like them. I was like, oh, shit, I'm actually good. I can play.
You actually can play,
because I can hear myself, because I cannot fucking hear myself. Because it was a situation where bass was turned all the way up, tone knob all the way up, and I was playing with a pick. Like really digging in to be able to hear myself.
And you were like really, so you could hear yourself within the context of the mix, you mean?
Yeah. And now, I mean, now I have in-ears and I have like a Sans amp and shit like that to where you have a little bit more control.
So you're prepared.
Yeah.
You got your emergency kit together.
Exactly. And it was just like, back then I didn't know that. That was kind of like, I just felt like I sucked, you know? Like I felt so bad about myself and would go home and be so upset after a gig.
It's good to feel bad sometimes.
Yeah,
because then the good times feel better. I mean, I know that's like super cliched, but it's just like it's good to feel like you suck sometimes.
Well,
I feel like I suck all the time.
It gave me a bunch of insight for what I'm doing now, because I put together a Broadway band with my friends. It's called Kaylee and the Cobras, and we're playing down there. And we haven't booked any gigs yet, but what we've been doing is we've been getting together to rehearse.
Oh, great.
Like getting a 4-hour set together. We're sounding fucking good and locked in.
Conceptually, that's like so insane to me. I'm like, you know, I've just been all week. I've just been in the studio, like, you know, spending like 2 days working on one song. Just the idea of like focusing on that breadth of material is like, I don't know. It's power to you, man.
It's intimidating, dude. Because there's even stuff like, because I have to play, like, especially when you're playing those gigs, there's a bunch of songs that I don't like that are not my taste at all, that I don't really care about.
You got to do them.
Yeah, but you got to do them.
Or at least you got to have them in your pocket or whatever.
Yep. So it's just like, would I want to play like Poison songs or any shit like that?
I wish I could play Poison songs, man. I would play fucking Unskinny Bop like 20 times a night, man.
But like I've learned a bunch of shit from it. And it's just even stuff like Rush. Like I'm not a big Rush fan. It's never really been my taste.
Yeah, but I mean, like from an anthropological perspective, it's interesting.
It's important to know, like, to learn the Tom Sawyer bass line.
Yeah, learn Tom Sawyer, learn Roundabout, learn Yes songs, learn Rush songs. I mean, like that. I don't know. I mean, it's like even if you have this sort of self discipline to not deploy them when you shouldn't, especially in the studio, it's great to learn all that shit.
Yeah.
Or at least like get a feeling of what it's supposed to feel like. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean the other thing about that I think is really really like helpful to be flexible, especially in like studio environment or whatever the case may be, is like learning a lot of songs and getting really 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 good at being able to sniff out like lengths of sections without, you know, that you kind of get that sixth sense about like, you're like, is this a double verse or is this a single verse? Or is like, does it go straight to the chorus after the bridge? Is it a double chorus after the bridge? And I feel like when you learn enough songs and absorb enough material from a bunch of different eras, like it almost, you don't need to think about it. You almost like kind of know what's going to happen beforehand. And that's obviously something, it's like we all understand what basic song forms and all that sort of stuff. But that's something that if you don't do it that much, I find sometimes when I'm like playing songs and I'm just like, holy shit, I have no idea how long these sections are. I know what the sections are. I know how to play the various sections, but I have no idea where shit is going.
And you don't want them to stop in the studio and be like, Nick, actually it's a
I plow through, you know, like transitions all the time. But that's, you know, that's just like kind of more just like the larger holistic thing about being like being a responsible bass player and not being the guy that fucks up, be it studio or live or whatever. I don't know.
So when you're working with Dan, what is the studio vibe like? What is he like as a producer?
Very, very quick. Dan is, I mean, we work extraordinarily quickly by even our like pretty quick New York standards. That being said, it sort of adheres to the basic methodology of like traditional Nashville tracking. It's varied a little bit, like the arcs, which was like not union sessions and self-deterministic and like material that was for that project, maybe like 2 songs a day, maybe 1, maybe 3. But I've come down and played bass on records for artists on Dan's label where we have recorded 8 songs in a day, 7, 8, 9 songs in a day, finishing whole records in 2 days. And he's got a real knack for letting out quite a lot of like fishing line to the people who are in the room. Like he doesn't comment very much because he's very, very good at putting together like ensembles of musicians who haven't even necessarily played together that extensively. Like he puts the right people together so he can work quickly, and he knows he doesn't have to interject and push and shove in terms of what people are playing. And then he's also like very he wants to capture moments He doesn't want to sculpt things in such a way where like the initial spontaneity is removed from it. He's like way more interested in whatever the initial inclination of a bunch of really good musicians playing hopefully a really good song, like for the first or second time will be. You know, and sometimes it's a little warty, and sometimes you listen to stuff and you go, oh, I could have really stood to have another 2 or 3 takes. But most of the time, because everybody's excited, everybody's really good, the songs, the references are usually really cool. Like the environment is really cool. Everybody respects each other. It's like usually he kind of captains these teams, which can get shit done like extraordinarily quickly, which is really nice. And you don't see that very much, especially, you know, like you'll have these situations where you kind of like you labor over the sound of the toms for 6 hours or something like that.
I hate that shit, dude.
Well, sometimes it's where I actually have to say I think there's 2 sides to it. Like sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes, especially if you're doing a project which is taking you 2 years and you're working, you know, like sometimes it really is worth it. Really, really, really laboring over stuff and making sure it feels right, and then making sure it feels right a week later and a month later, and then maybe changing it after 6 months. But it just requires like a different head, and I mean, maybe, you know, it's funny, like I wonder how Dan approaches, because I haven't played on any of the Black Keys records, but I actually wonder how he's approaching producing those records. I would guess that they move a little more slowly and like a little more
deliberate
and a little more thought and diligence. But certainly, I mean, this is when it's productions for Dan and it's artists on his label, it's like warp speed, and it's like it's fun. It's like always fun. When it's been outside productions, I think we talked about this last time, but like for instance, like the Lana record was like painful to make. But that was because his production style and her vision for the record were,
well, it's a little more pop and a little more polished.
I mean, but it was like different visions and like 2 people who were used to kind of getting their way with how you make the sausage. So that's like the best example I could think of Dan being forced to slow down because he was working with an artist who was unwilling to acquiesce and give in at all, and was just willing to like dig her feet in. But his natural inclination is to like move really fast. And just like, I mean, you think about it, like, I mean, that's actually one of the reasons that we've always always enjoyed each other's like company, like even outside of music, is like his like deep love and obsession with really, really, really fucked up recordings and really like just fucked up records in general, like things that like
the weird shit,
whether or not it's like weird blues records or soul records or like British invasion records or like African records or whatever. It's like he doesn't like things that have the rough edges shaved off, and I don't like that. Most of the time I don't like that either.
Yeah.
You know,
I would say my impulse is kind of the same, and like there's 2 versions of Nashville. There's this super polished Music Row Nashville, and then I feel like everything away from that, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I would just say, sort of to counter that, you know, it's like in, you know, 10 years ago, the musicians that Dan was using to make records were more, they were people who had existed out of the Nashville mainstream and were guys like me or Leon getting flown from New York, or guys that he knew from Ohio or the West Coast or whatever, or Germany or whatever the case may be. He has brought in a lot of these like absolutely top flight Nashville dudes like Mike Rojas, who's a piano player, and like Tom Bukovac, and like Russ Paul, and like Kenny Vaughn, and all these guys who are just like absolute,
like they're all great players,
like murderers row of guys who can execute all the stuff that we're talking about, all these kind of like just blazing things, and he's managed to work them into his ever-changing ensembles of studio musicians, and they'll like dial it on take 1 or take 2, but somehow like the wildness still remains. So it's like he's taking a little bit of like the commercial Nashville thing and maybe like a little bit of that polish, but still like making sure that it's kind of refracted through this kind of like still kind of like fucked up wild prism.
Well, the way that I've always think of Nashville for myself is Nashville is like a shark swimming around the ocean, and even for myself, I'm
prehistoric shark. The last one alive.
Yeah, pretty much. But I'm like one of the fish that's living underneath the shark that eats the parasites.
Oh, you're a remora.
Yeah. Because there's just so many great resources like the studio that's here. This is
sick.
That has nothing to really do. Like this is through the public library in Nashville.
Yeah,
that like it's a part of the
resources
library.
like this are incredible.
Yeah, and just having all of the musicians here and the studios here, it's like I've gotten to record. I've been lucky enough to record at places like Blackbird, that are like top of the line, nice places. And I've gotten to do my own projects there. But there's that Blackbird school there. So it's like they have student projects that they need to do. And it's like, can you come in these 3 days in July to do this? So it's like you get to eat up all of those resources that are here, but you don't really have to operate in the traditional music business.
Consider yourself lucky, man, because you know what? I would tell you this shit does not exist in New York anymore.
Really?
Barely exists in LA. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, world, but like I think this is the only city where this system still successfully operates.
Yeah, I would agree. And for me, like before I moved to Nashville, I knew the 3 places that I would probably move. It's like New York, LA, or Nashville.
Yeah, well, those are the 3 choices.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't
want to move to Portland and like have a recording. You can't do it.
Well, it's the music business has just changed so much, and doing music for a career has changed so much. And the other thing is, music is a lifestyle choice. Like if you choose you choose to be a musician, it is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
There's other sacrifices that you are making along the way to be like, this is my purpose on this planet is to play music with my friends.
Right.
But yeah, Nashville is such a great place. Like I love this city more than anything.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think because I moved here when I was 23. I'm 34 now.
Right. Different. I mean, very different town in a lot of ways.
Very different town. And it was like I became an adult here, which is weird to think about. It's like I knew nothing when I came here. And I was a good player in the way that it's like he can hang. But playing here and playing with the kind of players that are here, dude, when I first came to town, I came up kind of through like the blues scene that's here. Because there's a bunch of blues jams. And it to varying degrees. Some of them.
Is there much overlap with the musicians between the country stuff and the blues stuff? Or are they kind of like separate lanes?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You could go out to a jam. There was a jam when I first moved here at this place. At the time, it was called The Country. It's now The Local. It's right across from Vanderbilt. It's behind the McDonald's on West End.
I know where that is.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough.
But I heard about a jam that was there because there was this guy that I was working with, and he knew I was a musician. This was like my first 6 months in Nashville. I hadn't played yet. It's the first place I got on stage in Nashville. And I go in, and it's like a lot of good players, like guys who are home from being on the road.
Bro, as far as I can tell you, I've never seen someone in this town who's not a good player.
Yeah.
But okay.
But I just would go to that jam every week and get my ass kicked, dude. But it was so valuable because I would go home and I'd be playing, and I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to fucking do this.
Do it. You got to get the shit beaten out of you sometimes.
Yeah, and it was so valuable for me. And the same thing with when I was playing Broadway a couple of years ago with my buddy Josh. It's just you see the holes in your game, and it stings, it hurts, and they
get exposed really quickly, and you can't hide. I mean, again, especially as a bass player, you cannot hide.
Yeah.
You can't hide, man.
What's the story behind Locked Out of Heaven with Bruno Mars?
It was a Ronson production. That was on Bruno's second record. That was also recorded. It was recorded in a couple of different places, but Bruno and a producer named Jeff Basker and Bruno's guys and Mark came to the Daptone Studios in Bushwick where the Amy stuff had been recorded. And Mark called Homer and I, and we kind of we actually did a bunch of different places. We did it at Homer and Tommy's studio at the time, and we did it at Daptone, and we did it at some big studio in Midtown, and we recorded the song like 3 different times. And basically what happened was we sat around and we jammed, and me and Homer figured out that like pretty like cool, iconic, policey thing.
That's what it always reminded me of was the police.
It totally is. It totally is. It's like a police rip.
Yeah.
But like I figured out that bass line, and Homer figured out that drum part, and then we recorded it in 3 different studios at 3 different times. And what's actually on the record is just a 4-bar loop of like the demo from the first day.
No way.
I think in the end they just took 4 bars of the shit that was originally recorded at Daptone. And then obviously like Bruno's like a maniac in terms of the amount of time that he spends working stuff.
He seems really obsessive.
He is, I mean, to his credit, I mean, he's released a total of what, like I think he's released a total of 50 songs, and like 32 of them have charted. Like, you know, clearly his obsessive level of diligence to like work a hook for like a week or whatever, which is something that I certainly don't either have the technical know-how or the melodic thing or like the energy to do. It clearly pans out for him. But yeah, basically what they did was they were like, oh shit, this is a really, really, really cool, really strong bass and drum figure and guitar part or whatever. And we cut that, and then it disappeared in the washing machine and came back with like massive levels of production and pre-choruses and choruses and everything. But yeah, that was like done over the course of a few days. I played a P bass with round wounds and a pick.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
like Sting.
Yes,
yeah.
I had just acquired a 1969 P bass, which still had the strings which I had gotten it from, and I hadn't gotten around to changing the strings on it. And I was just playing it like a round wound with a pick, just like heavily palm muted.
Yeah.
And yeah, that one just kind of like popped out, you know, which is often the way it works.
Yeah.
You know,
the good ones.
Yeah, and I mean, like honestly, like I'm not like the hugest Police fan in the world. I think I mean I like some of Bruno's songs. I certainly like appreciate him personally and like his craft and everything. But like, yeah, that's really cool that just like popped out after knocking around and like jamming for 20 minutes.
Yeah,
which is kind of how it worked.
What is the story behind Youngblood, the Marcus King record? You played on that, right?
Oh, it's like Dan basically like Dan called me and he was like, do you want to come down and make a record? And then he told me who the guy was, and I was like, you know, it's like I don't play a lot of rock music, but he was, but then he was like, this is the kind of the angle that I want to do, and we're both like big ZZ Top fans. And
totally, you can hear it on that record.
Well, I mean, like I was like, I was like kind of like living in the moment even more, where we got, basically Marcus was playing like a burst, and I was like, Dan, do you know anybody that's got like a 51 Precision? And he called up Tom Bukovac, and he was like, oh yeah, I have a 52. He brought that to the studio, and I was just like, it was like a bit of cosplay. I mean, it's not, because like, you know, we had a lot of fun making that record, and obviously it's like it's music that has its own spirit and energy, even if it sort of is, you know, sort of spiritually slightly indebted to like the first couple of ZZ Top records. And then yeah, it was like a trio mostly, and then Zach Gabbard, who plays in the Black Keys, came and did some background vocals and some really cool rhythm guitar on it. And the drummer on that record is this dude, Chris St. played in a band called London Souls, and is now the percussion player in the Black Keys. And he's like Homer is my lifelong drumming buddy. And there's the guy Max, who played on a Lana Del Rey record, who's like my like freak show jazz freak, you know, like drum buddy. But this dude, Chris St. is like the guy who embodies the spirit of the Michels of the world, like that, like really wild, technical 60s British rock drumming.
Yeah, that's influenced by jazz drumming.
Yeah, you know, it's basically, you know, like that's the whole thing. One of the reasons why all these rock drummers are so good in the 60s is because they came up and they learned fucking jazz rudiments when they learned how to play the instruments, right? And just like every other record I recorded, Dan's, we did it in, maybe we took 5 days. Maybe we recorded 2 songs a day. But we just like ripped through that record.
So when you're coming to do records with Dan, is he sending you songs in advance, or is it
no.
It's all in the moment?
Fuck no. No, I mean it's like okay, so it's like with that okay, so it can be a little bit different. Sometimes it hews to some kind of like warped version of what you would refer to as like Nashville session studio mentality. Well, especially if it's like Bukovac or Mike Rojas or Russ Paul or whatever. They'll just be like, Dan has like a shitty iPhone demo that he did with the artist, and then you'll like someone
chart it out,
chart it and go.
Number charts, you know how to read a number chart?
Hell yeah, I mean number charts. I mean honestly, like number charts are my favorite thing about Nashville.
Really?
About the whole city. It's like the number charts are better than hot chicken, man. I mean like number charts are such a genius distillation of just like sheet music and conveying information. I love it so much, man. But on the Marcus record, Marcus just like showed us the songs. You know, it's like I don't think there were like 1 or 2 demos for that, but I mean it was a much smaller ensemble. It was really just like 3 of us for most of it.
Yeah, a power trio.
Yeah, it was a fucking power trio. That was a really, really fun record to make. Cause like I don't get to rip like that very much.
Yeah.
Like that was
where you're just laying back, eighth note.
No, there's like that record has some like kind of like dusty doom 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 kind of shit like that.
Yeah.
But there were a bunch of songs that had just like fucking rugged pentatonic blues riffage kind of stuff. And it's like I don't get to do that very much. And I was like that's fun. And like, Marcus is touched. That dude
he's got a gift, dude. He's good.
He like, I roll my eyes at a lot of the, I don't know, retro rock fandom kind of stuff. And I mean, like, I don't want to, my threshold for actually like my cold dead heart beating listening to any of these music is like really high. And I think most of it just feels like pastiche and feels like an unnecessary retread. But that dude he's such a cool, soulful guitar player. He plays the right shit. He's funny as fuck. He's sharp as fuck. He's he really has it. It's like he is his own musical being, and he has totally transcended the influences, despite all the sartorial trappings of the 60s and 70s sort of like rock heroes. And he's really fleet on his feet. Like he like knows how to play jazz and stuff as well. So it's like that was like a band where it's like, it's like three dudes were like maybe sort of consciously lowering our IQ a little bit because we were like
playing dumb.
Yeah, we were like playing dumb a little bit, but we were like playing dumb, but we were like fucking playing hot.
Yeah.
And that was really fun.
What was your experience like recording with Lady Gaga?
She's awesome. She's like, we did a bunch of sessions at our studio, the studio that I have with Leon and Homer and Tommy Brennick in Queens. We did like a week there.
Is that the Diamond Mine?
Diamond Mine. So we all piled in for a week. That was again with Mark. We did like a week of sessions in New York, and then we did a bunch out at a studio called, called Vox in LA. Those sessions were fun, man. She's a New Yorker, and obviously like she's lived in a, bizarre, crazy world for the past 15 years since she's achieved these like high levels of fame. And she's also like very much like a multi-hyphenate. It's like working with a lot of these modern pop artists is, kind of like the music aspect of it is really only one and sometimes minority facet of what's going on. Right. So it's like for working with someone like Lady Gaga, it's like she's focusing on the music, but it's part of a much larger holistic vision of which she is pulling and controlling the strings of the visual things and sort of like, she's not thinking about just making the music. She's thinking like what like the fucking stadium tour is going to be. But to her credit, I think probably because she was like a music school kid and she's got like, she's got a healthy amount of passion for like the nuts and bolts of like the actual musical creation, whether it's like dance pop or it's like the more 70s stuff that we were doing. It was really cool because she would just like sit down at the piano and just like light a cigarette and we would like bash through chords, and a lot of it didn't stick and some of it did, but there was no icy remove. She
was in it with you guys.
Hell yeah. No, she's like, I mean, she's like, she grew up on like the Upper West Side. I mean, like she's like a superstar, but like ultimately like, and that's actually another good thing about us being this like little New York crew is we're almost completely lacking. What's the best way to put this? Like we don't get impressed with anybody. We like don't fucking care who you are.
Yeah.
The only person who ever really got me where I got like starstruck was D'Angelo. It's like,
oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, it's like D'Angelo came to the studio and I was like, holy fucking shit. And then he played like weird blues guitar the entire time. That was weird. But in terms of our ability to remain like unruffled with stars and like really like not have like the
stars in your eyes.
The stars in your eyes thing is really beneficial for stuff like that because she's just like, oh, these dudes are chill. Like let's go smoke some weed. It's like I ended up in a fucking documentary with her.
Really?
Yeah, no. There's a documentary made about the making of that record and the tour. And
Joanne, right?
No, it's called 5'2", I think.
Oh, I meant the record.
Oh, was the record called Joanne?
I think so.
Let's say
we'll have someone backtrack us.
Let's say it was Joanne. Yes, the record was called Joanne. That sounds right. But you know, like there was enough like conviviality with us that like the opening scene of the documentary is like me and her like sitting in a parking lot outside of a studio, like smoking a joint, like talking about the legacy of female artists and how she fits in and all this stuff. Like she's like it's like a little bit like Broadway-ish. And a lot of it's kind of like she is playing a character and she understands what the production thing is, but she's like super cool, man. She was I had nothing but a good time with her.
What is Mark like in the studio as a producer?
Mark's great. I mean, he's gone through lots of different. I've been making music with Mark for long enough where, I mean, I've been making music with Mark for basically the entire arc of his professional career, sometimes more often than not. But his studio demeanor when he's on is as good as anybody that I've ever worked with. Like he's good at nuts and bolts stuff if he needs to be. Like he'll pick up an instrument and sometimes he'll come in with very, very fleshed out demos and he's like, oh, I worked on this and I have it. But he's a guy who has really synthesized all of his musical influences. And when he's thought enough about the project that's happening and he can kind of like deploy his, you know, substantial intellect to being like, okay, this is the lens that we're looking at this through, and this is how we're going to do this, and go guys, you guys fucking know what to do. Like he's the best. He's like one of the best producers I've ever worked with. Like he can distill concepts without feeding you lines, and you'll kind of like know how to translate what he's thinking in a way which often creates some very, very compelling music. There have been periods of time where sometimes he comes in and he's like a little, like Mark will sometimes come in and just be like, you guys do it. And we're kind of like, come on, I mean, you got to throw more of a bone than this. But then also it's like my you know, creative thing with Mark has sometimes been session musician. Sometimes it's been writing music. I've worn a few different hats. But generally speaking, yeah, like Mark's a class act, you know. Like he's well on his way to an EGOT at this point. You know, he's like a multifaceted guy who can do a lot of different things. And when he puts his mind to actually like producing a record and wants to do that, he's great. And he's a really fun guy. And he's another New Yorker he's like me. He's like a Brit and a New Yorker and grew up in the same neighborhood that I did and everything. So it's like there's always been like a sort of nice layer of sort of like a lot of conviviality between us in terms of like, with the other guys too. It's like we all grew up in downtown Manhattan.
So there's the shared experience.
It makes the shit a lot easier, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're not like, you know, it's not like you're not meeting like some like new cultural thing.
Well, it's interesting living here because obviously there's so many people moving from all over to Nashville, so you get a lot of different personality types. Mm-hmm. And like I grew up in Maine. So I grew up on the East Coast as well, and it took me an adjustment of being in Nashville to kind of get used to it. And everybody eventually becomes Nashville because this is a music town. Like when you're working on something, you're in a room full of musicians at any time, and that's what's beautiful about it. But, dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Sick. I'm glad that I was able to. Yeah, I'm glad that we could do this again. This was great.
Keep on dreaming. See you real soon.